In our series, The World After Coronavirus, today we speak to Dr. Saleemul Huq, who is with us from Bangladesh. And we speak today about what a world after coronavirus might look like for climate policy.
The coronavirus, although it isn't itself linked to human-induced climate change, has revealed a lot about what the world needs to do, and the solutions to the problem of the virus and the pandemic are very similar to the solutions that we need for climate change. The two emergencies require the whole world to rethink the path we're on and to change that path. But I think we also need to do it for climate change going forward. Our dependence on fossil fuels is something that we can actually overcome. And we are seeing that happening right now. We are not using as much fossil fuel as we used to. We're not producing the greenhouse gases that we used to. But when we come out at the other end of the tunnel, we hope we can continue the path of development, but without the fossil fuel burning and the concomitant greenhouse gas emissions. When we come out of it, there'll be a fork in the road, one going back to business as usual, which caused the problem in the first place, and the other one going to a brand new, greener, more equitable, more safer, environment-friendly world. And we know what that could be. We know what the ingredients of that are. What we've lacked is the political will to make it happen. And hopefully we might now have the political will to make it happen, and we can start now. The other thing about adaptation to the impacts of climate change, this really is something that I've been working on for many years based in Bangladesh, where for us, this has been an emergency for some time now. It just hasn't registered with global leaders that is as big an emergency for us as the coronavirus is for them in the developed countries, those who are being hit by the virus right now. And hopefully that will somehow sink in. And incidentally, also, the impacts of the virus in the developing world are going to be hitting the same most vulnerable people to the climate change problem as well. So the most vulnerable communities in the most vulnerable countries, who are the ones that are most vulnerable to climate change, also happen to be the ones who are most vulnerable to the impacts of the coronavirus, and also the impacts of the economic impacts of the shutdowns that are taking place right now in Bangladesh and in India. We have a lockdown, which is very, very heavy toll on the poorest people who live by the day. The two biggest differences between the coronavirus pandemic and the climate change emergency is that the emergency on the climate change side is not as rapid and urgent. It looks far away. And we have timelines of 2050, 2030, 2100. These are so long in the distance that today's leaders really don't even appreciate them or respond to them. The other difference is that with the climate change emergency, the impacts that are happening even now, are beginning to happen, will happen more in future, are happening on the poorest people on the planet, not on the rich people. Unlike the coronavirus, which is now hitting the United States, in a way that climate change will hit them later, but not immediately. The climate change impacts are happening far away, poor people, poor countries, out of sight, and therefore it doesn't raise it to the level of political emergency.
What is the lesson there for climate change with which we haven't tried to adapt?
One of the positive lessons that we are seeing as we speak now, with people adapting to the new conditions very, very quickly, by the way, is that if they have to, they can. And I think in particular, the examples that we had in East Asia, from China to Taiwan to Singapore and Korea, is that people, once they understand and know what to do, are willing to do what needs to be done. Less so perhaps in the West, but definitely in East Asia, this has been the practice or the experience. Both governments that knew what they were doing and taking early action, but people understanding what needed to be done and doing what they need to do. The lesson I get is that if people are knowledgeable, informed, know why they have to do something, they are quite willing to change their behavior in the greater good. And that really, to me, is a silver lining that's coming out of this, which will apply to adapting to the impacts of climate change going forward as well. It also has within it, to me, the seeds of perhaps a silver lining that we can rethink the pathway that we were on, which was a bad and negative path. Climate policy after the corona pandemic is over will have to be taken much more seriously than we have in the past, because the coronavirus pandemic, in my view, is a harbinger of a much, much bigger emergency to come, and everybody is now seeing that. And the demonstration that we have to take these seriously early, rather than wait for the emergency to happen.